on that. So, one of the things which we have to say to the people of South Africa is that President Jacob Zuma knows what he's doing in terms of founding this organization. And at the founding stages, when certain things foundationally do not make sense, they have to be changed so that the foundation is not defected, the foundation is not corrupted in a manner that...
Yeah.
I'm not saying this now because I'm in Umkhonto weSizwe. I said it when I was still in the EFF, like possibly for the past, if people pay closer attention to what we say and write publicly. I said on several occasions that we were misled on President Zuma, like long before there was even discussion of the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe. That is why, as part of these engagements...
That's why I really want to know.
Yes.
We were misled.
Yes.
Who misled you?
So the entire discourse of South Africa's politics, right, inclusive of influential media platforms and state institutions which in some instances were abused to pursue political agendas. It's not a secret that as public protector, Thuli Madonsela was in pursuit of a narrow political agenda. It also shows with what she got to do and who she got to associate with after her office as a public protector. At that time we thought she's a genuine person who is in pursuit of a genuine agenda, but she was in pursuit of a class agenda which sought to portray President Zuma as corrupt, to portray President Zuma as a person who is not living within the constitution, and she was doing so in protection of the white capitalist establishment. And we somehow fell into that trap, and that is why we supported Thuli Madonsela and said, let's have state capture inquiry and everything else. The inquiry happened. None of those monumental accusations that were made against President Zuma were proven then. Even in his absence, like they couldn't come and say, no, you didn't defend yourself. We've got the evidence that you bought a multi-million mansion in Dubai. You took billions of rands out of the state. They couldn't prove. There's so many allegations that we're making against the Siyabonga Gama, Lucky Montana, Brian Mulefe, all the critical role players in the government of President Zuma, but they were opposing them because those were beginning to push a proper radical agenda which was going to undo the injustices of the past and balance South Africa's economy to reflect its demographics in terms of population. So that is basically what got to happen. And I'm coming back to the same point again, that you can be wise, you can be a normal person when you are presented with clear facts which you verify yourself, and you still continue to believe in what you believed in before. That is called cognitive dissonance.
Yes, no, I want to move.
MKP isn't just building a party, they are building a movement. And if Zuma has his way, this will be a government in waiting, ready to unite all left-leaning parties and secure the full liberation of black South Africans. Is this the grand vision South Africa has been waiting for? Hello, Inkari is Time family. Welcome back to our channel, where we discuss the people and ideas shaping South Africa's future. Today we're diving deep into the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, or MKP, Jacob Zuma's latest appointments, heavyweights like Floyd Shivambu, former Judge President of the Western Cape High Court, Dr. John Hlophe, and former Public Protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, have got people talking. But there's more. This isn't just about a new party. It's about a bold plan to unite South Africa's left under one banner. So let's break down what this government in waiting is all about. Let's start with the impressive team behind the MKP. Led by former President Jacob Zuma, MKP has brought together some of South Africa's most experienced and influential leaders. You have got Floyd Shivambu, sharp-witted and ready to engage the youth. Former SARS Commissioner Tom Moyana and Advocate Dali Mpofu, both known for challenging the status quo. And then, from our public institution and state-owned enterprises, experienced leaders like Brian Mulefe, Siyabonga Gama, and Lucky Montana. These aren't just names, they are individuals who have been on the front lines of South Africa's challenges. But here's where things get interesting. MKP's grand vision isn't just about assembling a team. It's about uniting all black-led, left-leaning parties that are committed to the total liberation of black people. Zuma's team is pushing for a coalition of progressive voices to break free from political divisions and focus on the economic and social emancipation of South Africa's black majority. This vision has real implications. If MKP successfully unites these parties, they could create a powerful political bloc with the influence to implement sweeping changes in South Africa's economic policies. Imagine the potential of a unified front fighting for land redistribution, fair economic opportunities, and an end to systemic inequalities that have left black South Africans marginalized.
I want to move on to Black Unity and Progressive Forces.
Yes.
Which parties in the country you are looking at working with in terms of mobilizing for this big
So
movement?
the unification of the progressive forces, by the way, extends to all the political parties, including the African National Congress, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, all the progressive political parties. And of course, there are those that have to be rescued. One from their current capture and the ideological misdiagnosis of what constitutes their historical mission, and purposed differently. Like, so the ANC is still a contested space, and in terms of how it is constituted and its direction now, but the unification of the progressive forces is the unification of all progressive political parties whose umbilical cords are buried in the same yard, and are in pursuit of redress, of anti-colonialism, of anti-racism, of an anti-neoliberal agenda that is dominating the world now. So that is basically what we're in pursuit of. And Umkhonto weSizwe becomes the platform that will unite all these particular progressive forces in a much more respectable and proper, progressive, unified, progressive manner.
I think when Shivambu joined the MK party, that has been regarded as a big catch on the part of the MK party. And him rising to being the national organizer and now being the Secretary General of the party speaks to few positive things. One could be his proximity to former President Jacob Zuma, the now president of the party, and also the trust that Jacob Zuma could be having on Floyd Shivambu and other members of the MK party. Floyd Shivambu has a very good history in the national politics of South Africa. He has been involved in student movement. He has been involved in the Youth League. He is one of the co-founders of the Economic Freedom Fighters. And when you look at his political background, the energy that he has, age on his side, he could be the very right person to occupy the position of the Secretary General of the MK party.
So he obviously brings a lot of pedigree, political pedigree, 11 years or so with the EFF, the history that you talked about in student politics. So what are some of the strengths that he brings to the party, and potentially what are some of the weaknesses?
There has been a lot of people moving from other political parties and going to the MK party. But what has always remained in the lips of many people has been the departure of Floyd Shivambu from the EFF to the MK party. It is also because his own understanding and broader understanding of the South African politics, continental and global politics, gives him a much better position to become a leader and occupy the position of being the General Secretary of the Umkhonto weSizwe. When you also look at other members of Umkhonto weSizwe and what they bring into the party, it's totally different from what Shivambu could be bringing into the party. And based on the roles that people have to occupy, you could therefore realize that he appears to be far ahead of some of the colleagues that are there in the MK party. It also talks to to the trust that the leadership of the MK party could be having on Floyd Shivambu. And indeed, if you have to talk pedigree, Shivambu is part of those that are actually bringing into the MK party.
Humbled by the responsibility that we have been given to lead the organization as Secretary General. Of course, as part of the collective leadership that is under President Jacob Zuma, who has assigned us this responsibility to be Secretary General. So the appointment is a humbling experience. It's also a statement of saying that we should play the role that more or less we have been playing together with the recently outgone Secretary General, Dr. Siso Maseko, who did exceptionally very well. And now that he has gone back to government full-time, we are carrying on the baton to build the structures of Umkhonto we Sizwe. The task basically will be to consolidate the structures of Umkhonto we Sizwe. There is huge interest in Umkhonto we Sizwe in all parts of South Africa. And of course, after the 29 May general elections this year, bigger support came from the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal, from Mpumalanga, and here in Gauteng. So our responsibility and obligation now is to expand the organization to all corners of South Africa, but to also assist in institutionalizing the other component organizations of Umkhonto we Sizwe, which are the Umkhonto we Sizwe Women's League, Umkhonto we Sizwe Youth League, Umkhonto we Sizwe Student Movement. And of course, there are other propositions that are coming to form other organizations that are fully aligned to the Umkhonto we Sizwe. So that basically becomes our responsibility. It is a humbling experience to be given such a huge responsibility, which is not only looking into internal issues, but also has got an obligation to try to work towards the unification of all the progressive forces in South Africa, and then build a progressive agenda which will liberate the black majority and indigenous people from the consequences, the vestiges of slavery, of colonialism, of apartheid. So basically that is the responsibility that we've been given, and we're humbled by such a responsibility, and we commit that we're going to fulfill it with the necessary dedication, with the necessary discipline, with the necessary hard work and respect that is expected of all MK party members and leaders.
Yeah, interesting that you talk about the unification of progressive forces, because naturally one of the questions would be that as you ascend within the ranks of the MK party, now SG, if that is in any way a reward for being able to bring into the MK party some of the senior now former senior EFF members, the likes of Mkhwebane, Mangi, and now, of course, Advocate Dalimpofu as well?
No, I don't think it will be correct to claim that I am the one who brought them. They joined Umkhonto we Sizwe by themselves, out of their own political consciousness, out of their own appreciation that they believe that Umkhonto we Sizwe will play an important role and that they will make the necessary contribution. It is not my individual achievement. These are adults. These are people who have got huge political history. I mean, Advocate Mpofu, for instance, will be next year 50 years as an activist. Mzwanele Manyi has played several roles. He was Director General at some stage in his life. He had been a member of parliament. He was the president or chairperson of the Black Management Forum. Advocate Mkhwebane is an accomplished individual, a fighter for justice who had been an advocate. He has been a public protector, a very excellent public protector. So to could claim that I brought them is wrong. But out of their own political consciousness, they joined Umkhonto we Sizwe, and we appreciate the contribution that they are making and they will continue to make in the organization. So this is just act of identification of which roles can be played by who in terms of these responsibilities. And the president of Umkhonto we Sizwe saw it fit that I should play the role of Secretary General now. And of course, it is intricately linked with the role that was playing as a national organizer, because national organizing is under the Secretary General's office in terms of the guidance organizationally. We have a structure called the Secretariat in Umkhonto weSizwe, which is convened by the Secretary General and is coordinated by a national organizer. So it's more or less the same responsibilities that we're going to be playing. And then, of course, there are certain obligations that we have to fulfill now as Secretary General, and it's the task that we're going to fulfill with necessary focus and dedication.
Okay, but one thing that we can't ignore is that we did, of course, this week with the news that Advocate Dalimpofu was joining the MK party, also hear from him the revelation that he and the former President Jacob Zuma were some of the earliest people to have the conversation around the formation of the MK party, just days after he joins, you become SG. I mean, at what point did you know about the formation of the MK party? So there's something to be said about the fact that the former chairperson of the EFF knew about the formation. When did the conversation start for you?
No, look, I don't think there's any secrecy about the processes which President Zuma led before the official announcement of Umkhonto weSizwe party as an organization. He consulted widely with different role players, with Advocate Dalimpofu, with ourselves as well. Before December 2023, in October, he had called all the political parties, inclusive of the leadership of the EFF, of UDM, of ACT, of ATM, and various other organizations. So these discussions have been ongoing. So we were not shocked in December 16 when President Zuma made the announcement about Umkhonto weSizwe. We knew about its formation, and in principle, we had agreed that although we're going to campaign in different platforms, we ultimately are going to converge in terms of the principles that we have to espouse. And those are the principles of saying we must reclaim our land, we must push the progressive agenda, we should redress the imbalances of the past. We must refuse to be under colonial or neo-colonial rule here in South Africa. We must refuse collaboration with the white minority, racist and capitalist system. So that we have always been aware in terms of what got to happen. So there is no relationship, none whatsoever, between Advocate Dalimpofu joining Umkhonto weSizwe and me being assigned the role of Secretary General. It's a decision which the collective took out of its own collective wisdom.
Yeah, I do want to speak about some of the new, and perhaps some would argue not so new now, entrants of the MK party. You talk about Advocate Dalimpofu, I think about Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, and then, of course, Dr. John Hlophe. Some analysts are putting together the argument that you've got now the MK party really starting to build quite the team of legal minds within its arsenal. And just a few weeks ago, Dr. John Hlophe talking about how if the MK party was in power within the first 100 days of the of this new government, it would have moved to swiftly repeal the constitution, which safeguards the interests of the elite. Is that on your agenda to organize the tackling of the constitution in your new role as SG?
No, look, let's locate what you said first as part of this otherwise very long question. It's not only legal minds which President Zuma and Umkhonto weSizwe as a whole is assembling into the organization. It's brilliant minds and brilliant professionals and people who have got thorough experience in different fields. We've got people who have led very huge, complex institutions like Siyabonga Gama, who led Transnet very successfully, which was having upward of 6 billion rands profit under his leadership. We have Commander Brian Molefe as one of the leaders of Umkhonto weSizwe. We've got Lucky Montana. We've got experienced leaders like the person who's leading local government now in Umkhonto weSizwe is Bongani Baloyi, who was a mayor with clean record for 10 years in Midvaal, a municipality which, despite the ANC's erstwhile dominance in Gauteng, could not take from a Democratic Alliance, although it was wrong to be led by the Democratic Alliance. But Bongani Baloyi has played a role in terms of that particular responsibility. We've got brilliant minds in the collective of Umkhonto weSizwe. A lot of very experienced comrades who, if they were to be given the responsibility of leading society and leading government, they will do so efficiently and they will hit the ground running. And as part of the broader agenda of Umkhonto weSizwe is to change the foundational principles of the Constitution, which somehow safeguard the interests of the colonial masters, because it protects private property rights of property that was stolen from the black majority and indigenous people. And that is what we seek to displace. And that is the agenda which constitutes a historical mission of all liberation fighters, from those who fought in the wars of resistance, from those who formed the liberation movement in the early 1900s, to everyone else who was involved, even for those who were involved in Mkhonto we Sizwe, the Liberation Army. So we are basically taking the baton from those who fought before us, and we are committing as Mkhonto we Sizwe to fight until the finish line. That is why in our constitution, we emphasize that we want to fight for total decolonization. We want to fight for total political freedom, total economic freedom, total cultural freedom, total knowledge and ideological freedom, such that we live as a people that has got its own character, its own heritage, its own cultural systems, and of course embracing the democratic principles that define everyone else in society and universally. So that is basically the agenda of Mkhonto we Sizwe. The constitution of Mkhonto we Sizwe, succinctly but in a cogent way, articulates just what we seek to achieve. It's a lot of objectives that includes the achievement of free education from ECD levels to postgraduate level, which include a variety of other commitments as well, including protection of workers' rights. So that is basically who we are as Mkhonto we Sizwe, and that is the agenda which, in equal might and equal force, we're going to fight to achieve for the achievement of the objectives of Mkhonto we Sizwe.
And you're confident, Mr. Shivambu, that you enjoy the support of all senior MK members?
I'm 100% sure that the entirety of the leadership of Mkhonto we Sizwe supports the decision which was taken by President Zuma in consultation with all the structures. And they've individually called, like literally all the national officials of Mkhonto we Sizwe, called to say congratulations, which is not to say there's any achievement yet, is to say best wishes for the future, and they actually appreciate even the role that thus far we have played as national organizer.
The appointments we are seeing show that the MKP isn't only talking. They are assembling a team with the experience, skills, and vision to govern. Former leaders from the judiciary, public protection, tax enforcement, and major SOEs have come together to work on what they see as the next chapter for South Africa. If MKP succeeds, we could witness a new era of governance driven by a unified, people-centered agenda. So, what does this mean for South Africa? If MKP's grand plan works, they could be the government in waiting, ready to take the reins and push forward policies that truly prioritize the black majority's liberation. It's a bold ambition, and one that could reshape the political landscape by challenging traditional parties to step up or step aside. This isn't just about a new political party. It's a movement with the potential to unite South Africa's left and build a future grounded in justice and equality. There are skeptics, however, who say that Floyd could also be removed as Secretary General, given Jacob Zuma's reputation for replacing leaders within months. Considering what has happened so far with MKP's previous Secretary Generals, here is what Floyd had to say in response.
Because one of the things that also defines our president of Mkhonto we Sizwe party, it's zero tolerance to incompetence, zero tolerance to nonsense, zero tolerance to corrupt individuals and corrupt practices. So whenever people do things that are not mandated and outside of the organization, he takes decision immediately. He doesn't work on these things that were closing ranks even when there's wrongdoing. And I'm 100% sure that I'm not that character that will do wrong things. I'm not incompetent. I'm actually like far much more suitable for the responsibility or whatever responsibility that the organization can assign to me. So I think we're in for a long haul in the organization, because he will never irrationally take a decision that shifts positions for the sake of it. He does it for sound political, ideological, and organizational purposes and reasons in the manner that it is. So we're here to play the role of Secretary General of Umkhonto weSizwe.
You know, as you articulate some of the decisions and your approach, there's a lot of emphasis on the president. One wonders if Umkhonto weSizwe can exist without the main founder, which is the president of it, President Zuma.
So this is how organizations are founded. They are founded by individuals. They don't just exist from the sky. They don't fall from the sky. They are founded by individuals who must give it the organizational and ideological direction. There's no doubt, it's actually beyond any doubt that President Zuma is the founder of Umkhonto weSizwe, and it is still at its formative stages. Is going to play a central role as to what happens now in the intervening period. I played the role in the past of founding an organization. It was never having a conference in the first 12 months. It passed 12 months, it had conference after 18 months. And in the intervening period, the founders of the organization, which I was part of, were taking decisions as to what happens with that particular organization. Some organizations, by the way, found for more than 10 years. We've got organizations that are represented in parliament, who have been in municipalities. Some are even occupying government responsibilities, but have never been to elective conferences. Their founders are still giving it the direction that it deserves. So there's absolutely nothing wrong for President Zuma to give the ideological, political, and organizational guidance to Umkhonto weSizwe. So these people who are saying, no, why elective conference, why appointment and everything else, that is how organizations are founded, and it's all rational. Anything else will be disastrous, will be suicidal, will be apocalyptic in the manner that it is. So we have, as an organization, a leader who is responsible. He knows what he's doing. He has got massive experience in terms of organizational leadership. He has been a Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, he has been a chairperson of a province, he has been a Deputy President of an organization, he has been a President of the organization, so he has got profound experience. He knows what works and what doesn't work. You know, part of the ideological, political guidance that is provided by President Zuma now is that we are founding an organization, and if you want to base that organization on elective conferences, you're going to make it vulnerable and accessible to factional politics, but also to influence of money that is going to come from wrong sources to influence its direction and even capture it for wrong purposes. So we're founding the organization based on these principles that are founded in the Constitution in terms of what happens. We are not thinking about the departure of President Zuma, because we know he is not about to depart now. He's still strong. He's giving us the political guidance. And once the organization has gained its full traction, it's founded in all the voting districts, in all the wards, in all the sub-regions, regions, provinces. And once it has been able to overcome some of its immediate challenges, perhaps hindsight, or maybe later on, will then be able to reflect as to what do we do differently, how do we constitute the processes of selecting leadership, or do we assign that responsibility to someone else. But that will happen as and when we come across the bridge. We are not obsessed about that particular aspect. The immediate task that we have now, which is defined in the Constitution, is to build the presence of the organization in all corners of South Africa, and we're going to do exactly that.
I get you. That's for the future, from what you are saying.
Yes.
But as I'm saying, God forbid, nothing happens to President Zuma.
Nothing will happen to President Zuma.
But you and I, are not God.
Yeah, no, yeah. You know, and we are. Okay,
also, here's what I want to ask.
Yes.
What if tomorrow something happens? He is incapacitated in one way or the other. How do you then get to resolve the leadership issue?
We don't work on those postulations. We are not even working on those postulations. What we know now is that the leadership collective which President Zuma has assembled thus far is a responsible leadership that knows what has to happen, if anything were to happen, and we don't even think about that, by the way. So we've got the responsible and capable leadership that knows that we carry a collective and individual mandates and obligations to build a united organization which is not just pursuing unity internally, but also seek to unite all the progressive forces. So there is absolutely no confusion, and I wouldn't think that we would write a constitution and a framework based on suspicions or superstitions that someone is going to disappear. We know what we're doing. President Zuma is leading us now, and we all of us know, responsibly know, what should happen if you said God forbid, and we say that as well, that, and we know that there's nothing that is going to happen wrong to President Zuma.
You know, sitting here listening to you, wearing the green colors, and I mean, you and I so have worked together, well, together, not necessarily in the same organization. I've been in the media space, you've been in the political space.
Yes.
So I've been covering it for a long time. So I know how sometimes you viewed matters related to former President Zuma. In fact, I'm reminded of, I think, the 2011 Youth League conference, where I think for the first time you vocalized your view about former President Zuma. I think he was explaining the processes around Libya, and then you were so unhappy. And then that famous Ukhuluma Nambab, Utinibab.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So, and then sitting here, 13 years later, seeing Floyd Shivambu speaking so glowingly of former President Zuma. So what has changed? What is it that has convinced you?
I think if we want to let's historicize it properly. That, so, you know, in my entire political life in the student movement, those who served with us knew that before he was even president of the ANC, in the South African Students' Congress, were part of the student activists that were openly supporting President Zuma. Like, I know he addressed one of the congresses of SASCO in Fort Hare University in 2003, who were those who were openly, to the extent that even the internal dynamics of SASCO were associated with those of us who were supporting President Zuma, such that we lost some of the conferences because those who were associated with President Mbeki at that time were dominant in terms of the whole factional dynamics and all of those issues. And then we got elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC clique in 2008. And as part of those who were associated with President Zuma as well, majority of us, if not all of us, were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC clique in 2008, were in support of President Zuma. Actually, I remember that the first National Executive Committee of the 24th ANC Youth League, after the election, immediately we finished the National Executive Committee, went to support him in Maritzburg. I actually gave that recount when we went to support him currently again. And of course, during the tenure of our ANC Youth League, there began to be some political and ideological differences, sometimes which were subjective in terms of how they got to be interpreted, because in all honesty, there was never a time where President Zuma got to interact with the entire National Executive Committee of the ANC. But those who were representing us then came with the report that no, Zuma is selling out, Zuma is doing this, Zuma. And of course, we're under the leadership of whoever was leading us there at that particular moment. And then there was then issue of was the president of the ANC at that time. And we viewed the ANC leadership according to what the leadership was saying, all of us, that no, there's a problem, then it's a problem in terms of how it got to transpire. And then, of course, the issue that you're making a reference to, then there was the issue as to what becomes the approach to the Libya no-fly zone issue, and then there was that difference which got to happen. And with time, you know, I must have to say this much more emphatically, that you know, if you are a honest political leader, you can't be presented with facts and proper historicization of what happened in the past and still want to believe in what you believed in before. I think Franz Fanon calls that a cognitive dissonance, where you just want to believe on one thing even when there are facts that are obtaining differently. What I know about President Zuma now is that he knows where the battle line is drawn. He knows that we are fighting this side as the anti-colonial, anti-racist, anti-neoliberal forces, and he knows who are our friends. That is why even his association with the progressive countries in the world gives testimony to that. There's never been an incident, not even a suspicion once, where President Zuma has been associated with the establishment, or the capitalist establishment, domestically, continentally and globally. He has always fought on the side of the people. So, and those are the politics that we associate.
You understand. So, in short, you're saying somehow, I think in some platforms you said you had been mobilized against President Zuma.
Yes.
And then you've just said now, those who were leading you then, who gave you the report. I mean, I cannot think this refers directly to, I mean, your immediate former president, which is Julius Malema, who would give you those reports.
No,
is he one of the people who was?
No, I honestly wouldn't want to discuss politics in a narrower sense. Like, it doesn't help in terms of proper contextualization of the historical moments and what got to happen.
Yeah.
But you would know that during President Zuma's presidency, there was a lot of falsehoods that were spread by the media, that there's a house which is built in Dubai, like a huge mention of 400 million, all sorts of falsehoods, by the way. And we fell into that trap and joined into that nonsense of saying there's everything wrong with President Zuma. And then we called for the commission of inquiry into so-called state capture. But when the revelations came on the state capture, we realized that actually there is nothing which has been alleged President Zuma had done wrong. Like, there's objectively nothing that represents any state capture from his side. But we fell into the trap because the politics which I am purposefully departing from, and I've never been part of that, even when the entire grouping was excited about individualizing politics and everything else there. Like, we have to move away from these things of wanting to fight individuals, because it blinds you from so many progressive things which otherwise, from a collective and fair engagement, can benefit society as a whole. There are so many things, like you can go and check when we're pushing the land question against the caucus of the ANC in parliament. President Zuma says, I don't understand why the EFF and the ANC are not merging to have a common perspective on expropriation of land without compensation and amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. But because we're blinded by we're anti-Zuma, it doesn't matter what he says, we're not going to agree with anything. Okay. And those are the politics of the past, which we must leave there and then focus on the future, which is defined clearly as an anti-colonial agenda that seeks total decolonization. And that is happening under President Zuma, and we're proud to associate with it.
Yeah, but there are other parties which have indicated that, yes, they can, perhaps you can cooperate in parliament, but outside of that, it's done. In fact, I think I'm just reminded of the tweet of Julius Malema after Dalimpofu had left, saying, well, he's expecting 2 more to follow. You probably may assist me if you do know who could those be. And then he's basically saying, well, so we are guided by leadership. We are not going under that criminal syndicate. So,
I don't know about that. I did not read that as well. I'm hearing it for the first time. But also, I wouldn't want to make a response on sentence articulations. Perhaps if there was a political perspective that was given substantially in written form, or in a political input, we could then be able to, because when you give a political input that has got huge historical meaning, you must first give the background as to what informs your perspective, what informs your characterization of any political development, and on the basis of that, we can then be able to respond to that. So I don't think I'm at a stage where I'm going to be reporting to or responding to Twitter things and everything else. Those are streets, man. We don't deal with these. I deal with organizational issues.
Okay. After you've left the EFF, we've seen 1 or 2 high-profile individuals like Dalimpofu, the recent one, Busse Mkhwebane.
Yes, and Fana Mokwe.
Do you know other people, perhaps, that you interact with? These are your comrades who may follow you, not necessarily because you have called them, but because they feel the way you do?
I do not know of any of the leaders of the EFF, of any other political parties, who are going to join Umkhonto weSizwe in the foreseeable future. But if they are there, we encourage them to do so, because Umkhonto weSizwe is a progressive platform. And we are not in the process and in the habit of going to recruit the incumbent leaders of any political organization. They come by themselves. So here in Umkhonto weSizwe, we say that asibabizi bayazizela, they come by themselves. And these are adult comrades who have got proper political history and credentials. They know what they're doing. So to delegitimize and want to rubbish their political decisions out of political consciousness of joining Umkhonto weSizwe is just too low. So we must respect everyone's decision that if they think that their platforms to fight for the anti-colonial agenda, for total decolonization is Umkhonto weSizwe, they should do so. When we were younger, like when I was 30 years old when we started the EFF, because at that time, we thought that the ANC is not a correct vehicle to fight for economic freedom in our lifetime, and went to found the economic freedom fighters. If there are those who believe now that the economic freedom fighters, the ANC, the PAC, the UDM, and all other organizations are not correct vehicles and instruments to fight for total decolonization, they must come to Umkhonto weSizwe and boldly participate and without any shame participate in Umkhonto weSizwe, because that is what we're encouraging, that let us constitute a platform. And the historical context of this is that these multiple political formations that exist there, and there are not helpful in the otherwise agenda that has to be fought in unity.
Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think MKP has what it takes to lead South Africa and bring the change we've been waiting for? Are you ready to see a unified front of left-leaning, black-led parties fighting for a real liberation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Inkari. It's time for more discussions on the people and ideas shaping our future. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, it's time for change. Thanks for watching and take care.